Some cars are born from need, others from pure desire. Every once in a while, one emerges that does more than meet expectations. It rewrites them. It signals a moment when a company decides to dream beyond practicality, to shape metal and fiberglass into an idea of freedom. That's where our story begins, not with horsepower or speed records, but with ambition. Because behind every icon, there's a first attempt, a fragile beginning that risks failure in order to create legacy. This is the story of America's very first sports car, a car that started as a concept meant to test public taste but ended up defining an entire brand for generations. Its story is one of innovation under pressure, reinvention through failure, and the relentless pursuit of identity in a world that had already crowned Europe as the king of sports cars. Stick around as we unpack how a single model turned a risky experiment into the symbol of American performance itself. Like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments which car you want to see next. In 1953, Chevrolet unveiled the Corvette C1, a car that would become the foundation for one of the most enduring performance legacies in automotive history. But at the time, no one at General Motors knew what it would become. The idea started in the early 1950s when American soldiers returned from Europe obsessed with small, nimble roadsters from British and Italian manufacturers. They wanted something that felt light, quick, and stylish, but Detroit was still busy producing heavy sedans and family coupes. Chevrolet saw an opportunity to capture this growing enthusiasm, but the challenge was enormous. They had never built anything remotely like a sports car before. Harley Earl, GM's visionary design chief, pushed for a concept that would test the waters at the 1953 Motorama show in New York City. It wasn't meant to go into mass production. It was meant to see if Americans would even care about a lightweight two-seater. That concept became the Corvette C1. It looked sleek and futuristic, with smooth fiberglass body panels that gave it curves steel could not easily replicate. Fiberglass was still a new technology at the time, and using it on a production car was a bold move. It made the Corvette light and visually striking, but also complicated to build. Beneath that beautiful skin, the car borrowed heavily from existing Chevrolet parts. The frame came from a sedan, and the suspension was far from exotic. Under the hood sat a 3.9-liter inline-six engine producing 150 horsepower, paired only with a 2-speed Powerglide automatic transmission. For a car that wanted to be America's sports car, it was far from thrilling on paper. Yet when the Corvette C1 made its debut, it turned heads immediately. The crowds at Motorama were captivated by its look. It was clean, modern, and daring. A car that didn't look like anything else on American roads. Chevrolet received far more attention than expected, and the company quickly decided to put it into limited production. Only 300 units were built in that first year, all in polo white with red interiors. Each one was essentially hand-assembled in Flint, Michigan, and sold for just over $3,500. Chevrolet had created a sensation, but when the car reached the hands of journalists and customers, the excitement faded. The Corvette C1 was undeniably beautiful, but it lacked the performance to back up its promise. The automatic transmission and modest power meant it felt more like a cruiser than a true sports car. Still, Chevrolet didn't give up. The team understood they had something special. The look and feel were right, but the execution needed to evolve. Internally, there were debates about whether to continue production or cut their losses. Some executives saw it as a marketing gimmick that had run its course. Others, like engineer Zora Arkus Duntov, saw it as the beginning of something far greater. Duntov had recently joined Chevrolet and brought with him a deep passion for performance engineering. He believed the Corvette C1 could be transformed from a stylish showpiece into a real sports car, one that could stand toe-to-toe with European rivals. His vision would become the guiding force for the Corvette's survival. Duntov understood that power was not the only problem. The Corvette's suspension, brakes, and weight distribution all needed attention. But before any of that could happen, Chevrolet had to commit to the car's future. By 1954, production had moved to a dedicated plant in St. Louis, Missouri, signaling that Chevrolet was serious about refining its new creation. That year, sales climbed slightly, but not enough to guarantee long-term survival. Chevrolet experimented with colors and minor updates, but the public remained lukewarm. The Corvette was too expensive to be a toy and too underpowered to thrill serious enthusiasts. It was at risk of disappearing before it could even find its footing. Behind the scenes, Duntov began developing performance upgrades that would change the car's fate. He worked tirelessly to improve the engine, introducing a high-lift camshaft that significantly boosted output and performance. He also advocated for a manual transmission, something the original model sorely lacked. These changes began to shape the Corvette into something more than a design exercise. Chevrolet's management was still cautious, but Duntov's passion was infectious. He wrote memos urging the company to think beyond styling and marketing, to focus on the engineering that could make the Corvette a true competitor on the global stage. That mindset would soon define the entire lineage. Meanwhile, American car culture was shifting. The 1950s were the dawn of the horsepower wars, and young buyers wanted something that felt fast, exciting, and rebellious. The Corvette C1, even with its flaws, was perfectly positioned to become that symbol. It just needed the performance to match its looks. Chevrolet began promoting the car as a blend of glamour and speed, appearing in magazines and at racetracks to build credibility. Racing had always been central to sports car identity, and Duntov pushed to make sure the Corvette could earn its stripes on the track. He even took one to Pikes Peak and Daytona to showcase its potential under stress. The results were promising enough to silence some critics and convince Chevrolet to double down. By 1955, the Corvette C1 received its first major breakthrough: the introduction of the 265 cubic inch small block V8 engine. This engine was compact, powerful, and instantly transformed the car's character. With the V8 under the hood, the Corvette finally had the performance to back up its looks. The car could accelerate faster, sound meaner, and handle more aggressively. It was no longer a fragile experiment. It was starting to feel like the real thing. Chevrolet also offered a manual transmission for the first time, giving drivers the control they had been craving. The combination of style, power, and attitude began to win over skeptics. Even so, the Corvette's survival was never guaranteed. Chevrolet was still evaluating its future, and sales were modest compared to the company's other models. But the introduction of the V8 changed public perception. Suddenly, people were talking about the Corvette as a serious contender. It wasn't just a show car. It was a statement. The C1's fiberglass body gave it a unique identity, and its low stance and elegant proportions stood out in a sea of chrome-heavy sedans. Every iteration improved the formula slightly, inching closer to the vision Duntov had imagined. The Corvette C1's story is one of constant refinement under pressure. Every year brought small but meaningful improvements. The engineers tweaked suspension geometry, improved braking performance, and experimented with new intake and exhaust systems. They were learning what worked and what didn't, and every lesson shaped the next generation. The Corvette was no longer trying to copy European sports cars. It was developing its own distinct American flavor. By the late 1950s, the Corvette had matured into a machine capable of thrilling performance, setting the stage for what would become the Stingray era. The C1's early struggles forged its resilience. Its persistence through uncertainty built the foundation for everything that followed. The car that began as a fragile showpiece had become the heart of American sports car identity. By the mid-1950s, the Chevrolet Corvette C1 had proven that persistence and innovation could turn a shaky start into a story of redemption. With the arrival of the small block V8, the car finally had the heartbeat it had always needed. But power was only one part of the equation. What really mattered was proving that the Corvette could perform under real-world conditions. Zora Arkus Duntov was determined to demonstrate that it could do more than just look fast. He believed the Corvette C1 could dominate racetracks, test grounds, and highways alike if given the right engineering attention. Under his guidance, Chevrolet began experimenting with racing-focused components and performance packages, each pushing the C1 closer to legitimacy. Racing became the perfect laboratory for progress. Duntov personally drove a Corvette up Pikes Peak in record time, showcasing what the new V8 could achieve under heavy load. He later took a modified C1 to Daytona, setting impressive speed records that forced people to take notice. These public displays transformed the Corvette from a novelty into a contender. They also established a core philosophy that would guide the car's evolution for decades. Every improvement had to be tested through performance. Chevrolet began to recognize that the Corvette was not just a car, it was a symbol of American engineering pride. This was no longer about selling a few hundred units. It was about proving that the United States could build a sports car worthy of global respect. By 1956, the Corvette C1 underwent a major redesign that solidified its new identity. The body received sleeker lines, exposed headlights, and optional two-tone paint that gave it a bold, modern edge. Beneath the surface, the improvements were even more dramatic. Engineers introduced a 12-volt electrical system, better suspension geometry, and stronger brakes. The result was a car that finally handled as well as it looked. Buyers could choose between multiple power levels, with the top version producing up to 240 horsepower. A serious figure for the era. For the first time, the Corvette C1 felt complete. It was fast, reliable, and visually stunning. The earlier doubts about its place in the market were fading fast. The press noticed the change immediately. Reviewers who had once criticized the Corvette now praised its performance and balance. It still wasn't as refined as some European rivals, but it had something unique: attitude. The C1 felt raw and unfiltered, more about emotion than precision. It captured the energy of 1950s America. Confident, optimistic, and eager to prove itself. Chevrolet leaned into this identity, promoting the Corvette not as a copy of European sports cars but as an American original. Duntov and his team had transformed what began as a marketing exercise into a serious machine that could inspire pride at home and respect abroad. The 1957 model year brought even more refinement. Fuel injection became available, a revolutionary step that pushed the Corvette C1 into cutting-edge territory. Chevrolet marketed it as 1 horsepower per cubic inch, a simple but powerful slogan that captured the spirit of American performance. With 283 horsepower from its 283 cubic inch V8, the Corvette was now one of the fastest cars on the road. The car's improved weight balance and steering response gave drivers confidence in corners and stability at high speeds. The Corvette C1 had finally become what it was always meant to be: a real sports car. Sales began to climb steadily, and the Corvette was no longer a question mark inside GM. It was a success story. As the decade progressed, Chevrolet continued refining the C1, introducing better transmissions, stiffer chassis components, and more sophisticated styling cues. Each change made the car more capable and more desirable. By 1958, the Corvette had evolved into a confident, powerful machine that no longer felt experimental. Its dual headlamps, chromed details, and aggressive stance gave it a distinctly American personality, equal parts show and substance. Chevrolet had learned how to balance style with function, and the Corvette became a rolling statement of what Detroit could achieve when it decided to innovate rather than imitate. Yet the Corvette C1 was not just about performance numbers. It represented a cultural shift. In the 1950s, owning a Corvette meant more than just driving fast. It meant being part of a movement that celebrated individuality and ambition. The car embodied the spirit of post-war America. The belief that technology, creativity, and determination could overcome any obstacle. It was aspirational without being unreachable. Young drivers idolized it. Established professionals desired it. It wasn't just transportation. It was identity. Chevrolet had successfully tapped into an emotional current that extended far beyond the automobile industry. At the same time, Duntov continued to push for even greater heights. He lobbied GM executives to let him race the Corvette officially, believing that competition was essential for development. Although corporate policies often limited direct involvement in racing, Duntov found ways to support private teams and ensure they had access to high-performance parts. This semi-official racing presence helped the Corvette build credibility with enthusiasts. Victories on track translated to respect on the street, and the C1's reputation grew stronger each season. The car that had once been dismissed as a fragile fiberglass novelty was now seen as a serious performance contender. By the end of the 1950s, the Corvette C1 had done something few cars in history had managed. It had reinvented itself without losing its core appeal. It still looked elegant and distinctive, but it now had the muscle and capability to match its image. Each update brought it closer to perfection. The introduction of fuel injection, better suspension tuning, and improved aerodynamics transformed the Corvette into a genuine sports car that could challenge the best in its class. Chevrolet had turned skepticism into admiration, and the Corvette had earned a permanent place in American automotive culture. But beyond the engineering and racing triumphs, What made the Corvette C1 truly special was what it represented for Chevrolet. It showed that the company could dream beyond mass production. The C1 was a testbed for new ideas, from materials like fiberglass to technologies like fuel injection. It was proof that innovation could come from within a corporate giant, not just from boutique manufacturers overseas. That combination of creativity, persistence, and performance set the tone for everything that came after. By the time the C1 prepared to pass the torch to its successor, the Corvette had become more than just a car. It was a national symbol of ambition realized. As the 1960s approached, the groundwork laid by the C1 would soon blossom into something even greater. The Corvette Stingray was waiting on the horizon, ready to take the legacy to the next level. But none of it would have been possible without the first-generation car's determination to survive, adapt, and prove its worth. The Corvette C1 started as an experiment, struggled through doubt, and emerged as the cornerstone of America's performance identity. Its journey was not about perfection. It was about evolution through courage. By the time the Chevrolet Corvette C1 reached the end of its production run in 1962, it had come a very long way from its uncertain beginnings. What started as a stylish experiment had matured into a legitimate sports car, admired by drivers and respected by engineers. The final years of the C1 reflected everything Chevrolet had learned along the way. Its design had sharpened, its engines had grown stronger, and its engineering had become more confident. It was no longer chasing anyone else's idea of a sports car. It was defining its own. The Corvette C1 had become something uniquely American, a blend of power, elegance, and optimism that no rival could quite replicate. The last iteration of the Corvette C1 featured the 327 cubic inch V8, an engine that produced up to 360 horsepower when paired with fuel injection. It was a far cry from the modest inline-six that had powered the original 1953 model. This final version offered the kind of performance that once seemed impossible for an American-built sports car. The car could accelerate quickly, handle curves with confidence, and deliver a visceral driving experience that felt pure and mechanical. Every improvement, from its frame rigidity to its suspension tuning, reflected lessons learned through years of trial, error, and refinement. It was a machine built on persistence, driven by the belief that an American company could build something extraordinary. By this point, the Corvette C1 was no longer trying to prove itself. It had already won its place in history. The design language had evolved into a timeless silhouette, with sweeping lines and a stance that communicated speed even when standing still. It had also helped establish a culture of performance within Chevrolet that extended far beyond one model. Engineers across GM now looked to the Corvette as a symbol of what was possible when creativity met determination. The Corvette C1 had inspired an entire generation of designers and enthusiasts to think differently about what an American car could be. The Corvette's impact went far beyond engineering. It captured a spirit that resonated deeply with post-war America. This was a nation entering an era of confidence, driven by technology and optimism. Highways were expanding, suburbs were growing, and people were eager to embrace mobility and freedom. The Corvette C1 fit perfectly into that moment. It wasn't just transportation. It was self-expression. To own one was to make a statement that you valued performance, design, and individuality. The car symbolized an entire lifestyle, one centered around adventure and possibility. For many Americans, it was proof that domestic ingenuity could produce something as desirable as any exotic import. In many ways, the C1 also defined the formula that would guide every Corvette generation that followed. It combined advanced materials, cutting-edge engineering, and a distinctly American sense of style. Each of those elements became core to the brand's DNA. The fiberglass construction, once seen as a risky experiment, proved its worth by allowing designers greater freedom and keeping weight low. The emphasis on a front-engine, rear-drive layout created a balance that became a hallmark of the Corvette experience. And the relentless focus on continual improvement ensured that every successor would stand on a stronger foundation. What makes the C1 story so powerful is that its success was never guaranteed. At several points, Chevrolet came close to abandoning the project. Sales were inconsistent, critics were harsh, and internal doubts were strong. Yet, through persistence and innovation, the car not only survived but thrived. It demonstrated that risk and reward often walk hand in hand. Without that first-generation struggles, the Corvette might have faded into obscurity. Instead, it became a benchmark, a symbol of how determination can turn uncertainty into legacy. As the 1960s began, the Corvette C1 spirit carried forward into the second generation, the legendary Sting Ray. The lessons learned from the C1, lightweight materials, balanced power, and driver-focused design, formed the blueprint for what was to come. The Sting Ray would go on to become an icon in its own right, but it was standing on the shoulders of the original pioneer. The C1 had given America its first taste of genuine sports car performance, and it had done so with style. Every curve, every engine note, every design detail spoke to a vision that had been refined over nearly a decade of hard work. Even today, the 1953 to 1962 Corvette C1 remains a landmark in automotive history. Collectors cherish it, restorers celebrate it, and enthusiasts continue to be inspired by its story. It represents the moment when American automotive ambition took a bold step into uncharted territory. Its fiberglass body, small block V8, and timeless design laid the groundwork for 7 decades of performance innovation. The C1 proved that success isn't about getting it right the first time. It's about having the courage to keep improving until you do. That mindset continues to define the Corvette brand to this day. The Corvette C1's legacy is one of transformation. It turned doubt into belief, imitation into identity, and aspiration into achievement. It was never just a car. It was a declaration that America could build something world-class on its own terms. The story of the C1 is not just about speed or style. It's about vision, persistence, and the drive to create something timeless. The first American sports car did more than launch a model line. It ignited a movement that still burns bright across generations of drivers and dreamers. The Corvette C1 was the beginning of a legacy that would forever change the course of American performance. The Chevrolet Corvette C1 is remembered today not only for what it was, but for what it made possible. It transformed from a fragile concept into a cornerstone of American automotive identity. The 1953 Corvette C1 began as an experiment in fiberglass and optimism. A car meant to test public taste rather than define an entire segment. But through the vision of Harley Earl and the determination of Zora Arkus-Duntov, it evolved into something far greater. A machine that embodied style, innovation, and the daring spirit of a nation eager to prove itself. Every refinement, from its early inline-6 to its final 327 V8, told a story of learning and persistence. What makes the Corvette C1 so enduring is its symbolism. It represents a moment when American engineering stepped onto the global stage and refused to play by anyone else's rules. Instead of copying European formulas, Chevrolet created a sports car with its own character. Bold, muscular, and unmistakably American. Its fiberglass body was both a technological experiment and a design statement. Its sound, its shape, and its swagger captured the optimism of the 1950s. The C1 wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and that authenticity became its greatest strength. It showed that innovation doesn't have to come from perfection. It can come from the courage to begin. The Corvette C1 also left behind something more valuable than performance numbers: a legacy of continuous improvement. Each generation that followed built upon its foundation, learning from its mistakes and celebrating its victories. From the Sting Ray to the modern mid-engine designs, every Corvette carries a piece of that original ambition. The C1 set the tone for decades of engineering evolution, proving that progress is a process, not a destination. It turned Chevrolet into more than a mass-market brand. It gave it prestige, passion, and a global reputation for performance. Without the C1, there would be no Corvette heritage to speak of. No lineage of cars that balanced beauty with power and accessibility. For enthusiasts, the Corvette C1 remains a reminder of what automotive dreams are made of. It represents the moment when imagination met machinery and something timeless was born. Every curve on its body tells the story of innovation. Every sound from its V8 echoes the ambition of its creators. It stands as proof that even in a world full of established leaders, there's always room for a new contender if the will is strong enough. The Corvette C1 wasn't just America's first sports car. It was the nation's declaration of confidence on 4 wheels. That's the power of a beginning done right. The Corvette C1 didn't just start a brand legacy. It created a belief system built around performance, design, and the pursuit of excellence. Its story reminds us that every great achievement starts with a risk, And every legacy begins with a single bold step forward. And as long as the Corvette name continues, the spirit of that 1953 original will always be there, reminding us how far passion and persistence can drive us. Enduring. Iconic. American. The first Corvette didn't just define a legacy, it became one.